Hello, we've just moved into autumn here at Homegrown Veg in the United Kingdom, and if you're like me and you're gardening at home, it may be that the gardening season is over for you this year. It's over for me. I've harvested most of what there is in the garden and just about everything that I've got in the greenhouse, so there's nothing left to do other than to prepare for the next growing season, which is next year. And one of the ways I do that is to prepare my soil, because I like to reuse the same garden soil over and over again, and you can do that provided you manage it. Now, I've put a couple of videos up on my channel recently that shows you what I do with my soil to put the goodness back into it that the current year's vegetables have just taken out of it, so that it will be ready to go the following growing season. But what I want to talk about today is making some plans for next year, for the next growing season. And what we should be doing really is deciding what we're going to grow and how we're going to grow it next year. And I thought what I would do was I would actually show you what I've grown over the years in small 10-inch water buckets, and what I've grown just over the last year in some small 3-gallon fabric bags. I've only just got them. But I'm growing small scale because I'm growing at home and I don't have a great deal of room to work in. But you might be surprised at what's actually possible from a very small water bucket or a very small fabric bag. I mean, what you're looking at here is some leeks that I took earlier this week from a water bucket, and you're looking at some onions. I think these big guys came out of the raised bed. Smaller ones, I think they might have came from a bucket. I'm not 100% certain. It's a month or two since I harvested these, and I can't honestly recall just how I grew them. But I do grow these in buckets and bags. And I'm going to tell you about it. But first, we're going to look at some beetroot that I've grown in buckets and bags. So that was number one on my list. That was beetroot. You may have noticed that there was about 7, I think it was, 7 beetroot in the buckets, in the bags, and they were equally spaced. And this is where managing your expectations comes into it. How many beetroot could you reasonably expect to grow in a small bucket? Now, if your buckets are the same as my buckets, the same size, then 7 looks a reasonable number to try and grow in such a small bucket, in such a small bag. If your buckets are bigger, you might want to put more than 7 in there. But what you must do is manage your expectations, try and visualize how big these things can grow if they grow to maturity, and how many can that bucket sustain, how many can it hold, how many can the bag hold. You need to try and visualize it. And that's where these onions come in as props that I'm using today. We're going to go out into the greenhouse shortly, and I'm going to show you how I actually visualize what might be possible from a bucket, and so then I don't overload it. There might be one exception to that, where I do overload a bucket, where I have more vegetable plants growing than I can actually fit into a bucket, but the raised beds are full, so the vegetable plants go in the bucket. We overload the bucket and we get what we get. But before we do that, we try to manage our expectations, visualize how big the vegetable could grow, and then try and load the bucket or the bag accordingly. Now there are some tricks to this. For example, you could use a piece of old fabric netting laid on the top of your soil in your bucket, in your bag, and you've now got a grid pattern, and so you can actually space the seedlings equally. If I show you this is a 7-station template. It's made from polystyrene. It's got 7 equally spaced holes pushed into it with a pencil. If you want to get a template so that you can make these for yourself, there are links in several of my videos already up on the channel, and I'll try and give you a link in this video. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to try and give you a link to every vegetable that I grow that's shown in this video. So if you're interested in a particular vegetable, then follow that link. Okay, so if we wanted to plant 7 beetroot equally, we'd pop this on top of the bucket of soil, we'd push a pencil through it to make a mark, we'd take it off, and we would have 7 stations that were marked. But you can probably do that by eye. You probably don't need a template. But when we move on to our next subject, which is carrots, you may want to equally space 37 carrots. Well, this would come in handy. If you're going to try to grow 37 carrots in a bucket, you best try and space them out as best you can. This template is just what you need to enable you to do that. Or you might say, no, 37's too many, let's go 30 carrots. You might even go less than that, you might go 20, you might go 15. It's entirely up to you. It's entirely up to you. But these templates are available on a link on my channel. Just have a look around the channel, you'll find it. Okay, so we're going to number 2 on the list now, and that's carrots. Again, you should be able to see that these are equally spaced, and remember, for every screenshot you're going to see now, that's one delivery from one 10-inch bucket of carrots, or one delivery from one small 3-gallon fibre bag of carrots. So, we can grow carrots in a bucket, we can grow beetroots in a bucket, I've just showed you that I can do it, you can do it. Honestly, you can. We're going to have a look at some celery now. Now, I like to plant 4 heads of celery in a bucket. And what I usually do is start them off as seedlings, start the seeds off. And when I've got 4 small seedlings, I plant those up into a bucket. And I think you'll agree when you have a look at this, that 4 heads of celery in a small bucket is probably about the maximum. I wouldn't want to try and squeeze any more in there. Maybe just 1 or 2 or 3 heads of celery, but certainly no more than 4. If your bucket's bigger, you may want to go 4. Check number 3 out on our list, celery. Okay, we're going to do onions now, and for me to show you how this visualization works, we need to pop out to the greenhouse. We're going to take these onions with us, and we're going to shoot a little video in the greenhouse of how I try to visualize the end result. Okay, so when you put these onions in, they're very small, and it doesn't look as though you've put enough onions in that bucket or in that bag, but trust me, by the end of the growing season, you're glad you've actually managed your expectations. You've limited the number of onions you've sown in that bucket or bag. Okay, let's go out and let's have a look at these in the greenhouse. Okay, so this is 10-inch water bucket. Right. If you're growing a smaller variety of onion, you may want to choose 7. There may not look to be a lot in there when you plant 7 small onions, but if all those 7 onions grow, this bucket starts to look full, doesn't it? These guys are nearly shoulder to shoulder. 7 small onions growing in a 10-inch water bucket. So it's important you actually know what variety of onion you're growing and its potential. Is it a small onion? Is it a big onion? I've got some big onions. When I grow big onions in these small water buckets, I usually just grow the 4. I've got 4 Ailsa Craigs here that I grew this year. We'll just pop those up in the bucket, let you have a look at them, and you'll see the difference. Hey, that's a bucket full of onions, isn't it? And there's only 4 there. Previously I showed you a bucket with 7 smaller onions in. So manage your expectations. Try and visualize what you're likely to get out if the onions, or any vegetable for that matter, reaches its full potential. And just try and grow that many. Whatever figure you calculate, try and grow that many. I'll just show you this last one, and if you've got 4 of these in your bucket, well, you may finish up with a broken bucket. This was the biggest onion I grew this year. This is an Ailsa Craig. Hey, imagine if you got 4 of those in a bucket. Blimey, Yeah, maybe the bucket isn't big enough. Maybe you don't want to be growing 4 if you can get them to grow that big. But I showed you the ones that I've grown in buckets, and that's generally the size I can get them to, and so that's the number that I decide to plant when I sow onions in a 10-inch water bucket or in one of those 3-gallon fibre bags. Right, let's go back indoors and finish this video off. Yep, let's do that. Come on. Okay, so that's how we do it. That's how we do it at homegrown veg. What we're moving on to next, what have we done? We've done beetroot, carrots, celery, onions. Let's do leeks. Okay, these can be quite a big vegetable. Leeks can be a big vegetable. I think my choice is usually 4 to a bucket, but I think, as I've said earlier in this video, that when I've planted all my leeks and I have some left over, however many I've got, they're going in a bucket. Okay, where we at? We're at number 6. We're on shallots, or sometimes termed green onions. Take them early as green onions, let them grow to maturity to shallots. What I've found with shallots is, if I plant 4 in a bucket or a bag, it wouldn't be unusual to get 25 shallots in return. I know I've done it more than once. So while it might not look to be a lot, just 4 shallots in a bucket, it's ample. You can put more in if you like, you can put less in here if you like. Yeah, it's entirely up to you. Check this out, these are the shallots. Number 7, garlic. I'm not too sure how many garlic I planted actually in buckets and bags this year, whether it was 4 or 5. I think it was 4. And I got a reasonable result. And in actual fact, some of those garlic cloves I've just planted quite recently. I've just put them back in buckets. And I think I've called the video something like garlic goes full circle, because I planted it the previous autumn. I grew it through autumn, winter, spring, harvested in summer, and then this autumn I've taken some cloves from those garlic bulbs and planted them again. Hey, you needn't buy garlic anymore ever. This just goes on and on. Check out the garlic. Garlic is number 7. Parsnips. I want to do 2 together here. I want to do parsnips number 8 and sweet corn number 9, because I've grown them but I'm not too happy with the results. But I want to show you my results. Hopefully you can better them. Parsnips, I think I have an issue with the depth of the buckets, but I'll give it a go anyway. And sweet corn, I had no issue growing the sweet corn, and each of the plants produced 3 or 4 cobs. The problem was that I didn't have enough of it in a block to enable the wind to pollinate, and furthermore, when I did get the wind, it was far too strong and it was usually raining, and I think most of the pollen went over my fence into my neighbour's garden. It didn't pollinate the cobs, and so the cobs were quite sparse. So I think I've made my mind up. Yes, you can grow sweet corn in buckets and probably bags, although I've never done it. But the results I got weren't that good, and I'm not too sure I've got the conditions in my garden to grow sweet corn. Too windy, too wet at the wrong time of year. Parsnips, I'll probably give those another go. Right, check these out. Parsnips at number 8 and sweet corn at number 9. The last vegetable on the list is potatoes. I find these so easy. Now, depending on where you're gardening, in what part of the world, it might not be as easy. But if you're gardening in the United Kingdom or somewhere where the climate is temperate, hey, this is how easy it is. A 10-inch bucket, 2 inches of soil in the bottom, stick the seed potato on it, fill the bucket to the top, stand it outside, don't water it till you see some green shoots, give it a drink of water, bish bash bosh, that's it, that's it. And ideally what I do, you might want to follow my lead on this, is before you put the soil in the bucket, mix a little fertiliser in with it. I've used a potato fertiliser that's designed for that crop. I've also used bloodfish and bone, I've used Gromo, I've used anything to get my hands on, really. Mix it with the soil, 2 inches in the bucket, potato on the 2 inches, top the bucket off, don't water it till you see a little bit of green stuff coming out, and that's about it. Just don't let the bucket dry out. And that applies for every vegetable that you've seen in this video. Do not let the bucket dry out. Just don't let it dry out. Now you're going to say to me, well, how often do you water? That's entirely up to you, and you'll build up the expertise and you'll learn from your mistakes. If you let the buckets or the bags go dry, there's every chance the vegetables will die. If you overwater the buckets or bags, again, the vegetables could die. So it's a bit of a balancing act, and you're working with nature as well, particularly if in an area that gets rain fairly frequently. You need to balance that in, but be aware that when it does rain, not a lot of rain goes in your bucket or your bag. Most of it is caught on the leaves and evaporates off. I've actually done a video on that, and particularly with potatoes, because when a potato top gets up and it's big, that's like an umbrella. So you might get a lot of rain, but not much of it gets on that soil, not much of it gets to the potatoes. You probably still need to water. Okay, have a look at the potatoes at number 10, and then come back to me and we'll round this video off. Okay, so we're talking about growing in a bucket or in a bag, but you may have room for more than one bucket. You may have room for a few buckets, in which case you might want to build a square foot bucket garden. No need for me to explain what that is, just look at these screen grabs and then come back to me. Okay, so that was a square foot bucket garden. It's got loads of advantages, If you're growing leeks in one of your buckets and you want to harvest those leeks, lift the bucket out of the garden, harvest the leeks, put the bucket back in, grow something else. Same for shallots, celery, carrots, beetroot. If you're growing those in a square foot bucket garden and you want to harvest them, you can harvest them from a bucket with absolutely zero soil disturbance to the adjacent vegetables. And the other advantage that a square foot bucket garden has over a conventional square foot garden if there's a wind blowing across your garden and it's strong and it looks as though it's drying your buckets out or damaging your vegetables, pick them up, move them behind a wall, move them next to your property, get them out of the wind. And then when the wind dies down, reconstruct your bucket garden. You've saved your vegetables. You haven't lost any to damaging wind. And if one side of the square foot bucket garden gets more sun than the other and you want to even it out, just move the buckets about. Share the sun, share the love. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. Check out the links in the text below the video. You should find a video that will take you to any of the 10 vegetables that I've just discussed in this video. Show me growing them. This is Homegrown Veg, signing out.